I'll invite Mr. Burzine Waghmar. Burzine, I have the following issues for you, if you can throw light upon these issues. The conflict dimensions within Iran, prospects of regime change and internal political dynamics, Iran's military leadership, succession issues in the Shia leadership, its capabilities to carry out attacks, implications for global geopolitics, including potential reactions from China and Russia, India's overall stakes and strategic considerations in the current scenario. But feel free to address other issues if you want to.
Good afternoon from London, England. The geopolitical aspects with China, India, and the others can be left to a discussion period. I would like to concentrate on Iran and Iran alone in my remarks at present. Ta'asua and Ashura 2025, 1447 Hijri, Khamenei's last Muharram. The Republic has long pursued a centralizing ideological project, often under the banner of the glorious Islamic Revolution. But analyses of Iran and neighboring Pakistan show such projects frequently rely on minoritarian suppression to cement state legitimacy, whether it's the Zoroastrian legacy being overshadowed by Shia orthodoxy or the marginalized voices of non-Persian minorities. The unity projected by Tehran often masks fracture lines beneath. A hallmark of post-79 Iran has been the profound growth of security and paramilitary structures designed not just to repel foreign threats. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Pasdaran, intelligence services, Wazarat-e-Amniyat va Ettelaat Keshvar, and religious institutions operate not only as guardians of the state, but as arbiters of identity and faith. And yet Iran is a mosaic, not a monolith, as its identity is contested, negotiated, and never fully absorbed by Tehran's orthodoxies. The end of an era, from revolutionary charisma to institutional entropy. Khamenei's rise in 1989 inaugurated Islam's Second Republic, the first which started from February 79, ladies and gentlemen, to Khomeini's demise in June 89, following which the Second Republic is which we are still living through. And that was less animated by revolutionary zeal, more defined by bureaucratic inertia and the deepening of a clerical security oligarchy. Unlike Khomeini's charismatic founding figure, Khamenei has leaned heavily on institutional support, particularly the IRGC, to preserve regime unity and suppress popular dissent. Cracks in the Velayat-e-Faqih. The doctrine of Velayat-e-Faqih, once buttressed by revolutionary myth and clerical authority, now faces fragmentation on multiple fronts. Internal clerical dissent. Traditional Shia authorities, both within Iran and in Najaf, as well as Lebanon, remain deeply suspicious of its theoretical foundations and practical excesses. Popular and generational fatigue. Successive protest movements, the Green Movement, 2017 to 2022, and the recent Zan Zendagi Azadi wave indicate that its legitimacy is evaporating among both the educated and the subaltern. Doctrinal exhaustion. The clerical ideological edifice is discursively and socially exhausted, if not dead, because the centralizing theological narrative has lost its grip on a society that is multifaceted, globalized, fragmented, socially aware, socially wired, and deeply disillusioned by decades of authoritarian stagnation. IRGC as a successor state from garrison to governing force. Projected onward, the IRGC appears poised to reshape the post-Khamenei landscape. Kingmakers in succession. Analysts argue the IRGC will be the arbiter of this transition, with the power to appoint a pliant leader or even bypass the supreme leader, the Rahbar, entirely. State within a state. The guards already command vast economic assets, construction, smuggling, sanctions-busting conglomerates under policies cloaked as a resistance economy, close unquote. Shifting foreign policy engine. With clerical authority fracturing, the IRGC may feel emboldened to escalate its paramilitary and proxy campaigns not as subordinate agents, but as architects of Iran's posturing abroad. This would imply not merely a tactical shift, but a radical overhaul from clerical theocratic primacy to a Praetorian security oligarchy, tacitly legitimized by constitutional forms but driven by paramilitary logic. The succession dilemma: clergy, military, or puppet. Once Khamenei exits the stage, one would have to highlight the institutionally induced competition parameters. So the IRGC, the clerical establishment, and factions within the Beit, inner circle are likely locked in a power scramble. Potential scenarios range from a puppet Fahi conforming to military will, to the IRGC asserting overt control, to even institutional collapse if factionalism overtakes centripetal cohesion. The future of the Islamic Republic hinges not on elections or clerical consensus, but on which faction controls the deep state's organs of coercion and whether irredentist authority can morph into governance legitimacy. Cultural aftershocks, from clerical hegemony to militarist haze. Should the IRGC consolidate its dominance, then the Velayat Fahi will be stripped of its institutional role and relegated to a performative facade, a relic with ceremonial weight but not any real control anymore. The IRGC's model, paramilitarized governance, ideological economy, proxy entanglement, will become the nominal core ideology, not clerical jurisprudence, of the Ithna Ashari, 12 Shia Ja'afri madhab or school. Civil society, already beleaguered, will face harsher repression under a regime that views every cultural or social movement as a threat to order. I argue such a transformation may mark the end of the Second Republic of Iran, a shift from a theocratic national state to a militarized deep state, lacking ideological cohesion and increasingly trapping itself in cyclical crises. Iran's era of Velayat Fahi, born in revolutionary fervor, has faltered under bureaucratic sclerosis and ideological exhaustion. With Khamenei near the end of his tenure, the IRGC is ready to ascend, not overtly overthrowing the clergy, but absorbing its authority, militarizing governance, and preparing for a struggle, internal and even external. Unless Iran reinvents itself on more inclusive terms, integrating cultural pluralism, restoring popular legitimacy, and redemocratizing its religious scholarship, it will enter a new era of authoritarianism, not clerical, but paramilitary, and perhaps more brittle and insecure for times to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Burzine, for giving an excellent overview of Iran's internal conflict dynamics and what are the possible and likely scenarios in Iran after this conflict. In fact, I mean, this all looks like something very confused and a mixed setup in which military IRGC plays a very crucial role and the institution of Khamenei Faki is relegated to the background. But once again, this raises several questions that the original discussion about Iran has always begun with the idea of regime change. I've spoken to many Israeli experts and many Western experts. They have discussed whether it's possible or not. That's again a different question. But once again, I'll begin the Q&A session with this question: that what is the likely future of the regime change? So now, having asked this question, I'll just open the house for the question, and if anyone wants to ask a question, you can type your questions in the chat box or even raise your hand and directly ask your question. But Burzine, I'll just request you to begin the session by the future possibilities of a proper regime change.
If wishes were horses, beggars would ride, is my first point. It is a strong state, Dr. Pandya. What is said for Pakistan often applies also, insofar as I'm concerned, to Iran.
Hello.
Many stakeholders who are entirely suicidal idiots.
Yeah. We lost your voice, Burzine. Can you just repeat the last sentence?
Yeah. I'll just state what I said again, that in the Iranian context, what applies to Pakistan also applies to Iran, that it is a strong state, it is a failing state which refuses to fail. And therein, one-to-many security apparatus and stakeholders who will not see it falter. Remember also, Abhinav, that Khamenei once remarked years ago, we are not exactly Allende in Chile who will be snuffed out, referring to the CIA and the 73 revolution. And of course, he had in mind what was done in 1953 when Mossadegh was eased out of office by us, London and DC. So that plays quite heavily on his mind. And of course, they're not going to easily give up power. If anything, I've also argued in media broadcasts this week that some would say Iran is facing its Berlin moment, just as the Allies converged in April 45 and a certain other individual was in a bunker, and this time Khamenei is in a bunker in northeast Tehran too. The analogy need not be strained, but it's quite relevant because we are talking about a regime which conducts Holocaust denial cartoon competitions. And of course, daily TV sitcoms have reruns of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion alongside cooking shows for bored housewives. So that's a present day Iran for you as such. So that needs to be put into context. But he would prefer Abhinav to go down a martyr because that feeds into this exaggerated Shia victimhood mentality and disposition rather than cave in or capitulate. Because what else does he have to show for himself currently? It is increasingly evident to the IRGC and the other uniformed sorts who have a stake in the system that the clerics are left blinking in the sunlight, dazed, confused. Khamenei's weak approach in the face of Israel's relentless assaults, not just the most recent, but the previous two as such, and that they just don't know how to hold the fort of the system, as it were, or the country, and that we would increasingly have to take over. And that is pretty much writing on the wall. And Khamenei has always been leery of the Revolutionary Guards and has leaned quite heavily on them, particularly after Abhinav, when the last, and I say not voice of opposition or resistance to him, but a checking force was when Rafsanjani died in 2017. There was nothing to hold him back. And after all, it was Rafsanjani who eased him into office back in June 89. And of course, he had a falling out with Rafsanjani over the years too, papered over by cracks of unity on the forefront. And Khamenei has fallen out with every president since 89, Abhinav. Make no mistake. And he has humiliated them tacitly when in office too. It's just the way he operates, and he keeps the system in perpetual flux as such. But it's clearly not paid off, and the office is thoroughly discredited of the supreme leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Burzine. So now we have two questions, and I'll just read out the questions. For what role can India really play in this conflict without taking sides? And second one is Iran has banned the IAEA until it gets security guarantees. What is supposed to give these guarantees, and what kind of guarantees are these supposed to be? So regarding the India question, I would like to add something to it. I mean, what are India's primary concerns in this? I mean, there's one theory that, after I've heard, and I've also repeatedly mentioned in my articles, that the growing proximity between General Asim Munir and the Americans, it raises fears, it raises eyebrows in New Delhi, because the whole thing looks like the redux of America's Afghan invasion in 2001. And if Pakistan ends up providing all kinds of logistics and facilities and other air bases to the US, in the longer run. I mean, for example, hypothetically, if this escalates, then Pakistan becomes very crucial player in this entire region, Iran, Central Asia. So that is something which will not go down well with Delhi. But overall, I mean, how do you look at India's overall? Whoever wants to ask this question, but I guess, Burzine, you can take the India question. I mean, if you want to know.
Maybe.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Barak, sure.
I know there is a Shia community inside India.
Yes. Yeah.
So maybe India can play a soft power, like promoting peace narratives inside India, to speak about the importance of not absorbing or being influenced by radical narratives of like states who support radical narratives like Iran or others. So this is like can be a neutral role by by India, like to promote peace narratives. Also to be part of Israel, to be a very important ally of Israel and the other regional actors on economic initiatives. Like now there is. You asked me what is the atmosphere in Israel. So now after the war in Iran, when the war in Gaza will end, there are discussions that maybe Saudi Arabia can be normalized ties with Israel. So India can join to these moderate state alliance in the region, and to promote again peace narratives in the region, to cultivate the economic ties between Israel and other the Abrahamic states. I think India is known by its peaceful narrative and the coexistence. So definitely, India has a very important role in that.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else wants to take this question?
May I just come in briefly?
Yeah.
Michael, I'm a bit skeptical of the Indian Muslim population, whether Shia or Sunni. And incidentally, India is home to the largest 12er Ithna Ashari Imami Jafri population in the world. That has been uppermost in Tehran's mind since 79 in dealing with India, in that it has been cagey not to be too critical of India as well, though Khamenei has not been averse to mentioning the so-called plight of Kashmiri Muslims in India, which is a bit absurd, which he also did back in August 2024, if you recollect. And I had mentioned in my broadcasts therein too that it is odd because in the Kashmir insurgency, which started from June 88 onwards, and in a way is still ongoing in India, it's only Sunnis who have been suicide bombers or paramilitary agents who crossed over to Pakistan for training and infiltration and the like. Kashmiri indigenous Shia have had no truck in problems, irredentis issues with the administration in New Delhi, or with a sense of, being part of India as such. They may chafe under Indian rule, have has disgruntled elements is another matter, but they have never actively participated. The entire movement of Kashmiri militancy has been primarily Sunni Hanafi driven. So that is one thing to be said. Insofar as the other aspects of the Indian Shia population is concerned, that falls in line with the Indian Sunni population and, in a larger sense, South Asian Muslim population thinking, where they simply cannot be magnanimous enough, intellectually or spiritually speaking, to realize that there is such a thing as a Jewish homeland, and Zionism is just a manifestation of Jewish nationalism, just as Pakistan was predicated on Muslim nationalism. But that sense of generosity seems to be patently lacking when you try to have an intellectual discourse, which I do, even with South Asian Muslims, as a non-Hindu and non-Muslim that I am. But I do firmly do so, and I never seem to get that message across, though I try, and I bring that point in very stridently, that it is just, Zionism is nothing but a manifestation of nationalism, which can be seen as Buddhist nationalism in Sri Lanka, Hindu nationalism in India, or Muslim nationalism in Pakistan. So there is nothing so extraordinary or unpalatable about it, and that you ought to be able to broaden your horizons to accept it for what it's worth.
Thank you, Burzine. And I think I saw that we have General Khandare with us. General Khandare is one of the most refined experts on security and foreign policy issues, and he has just, basically finished his tenure as a principal advisor to the Ministry of Defense. In case if he is here, then I'll request you, General Khandare, to share your thoughts briefly on India's stakes, because I guess he is the man who has been within the system. He has served in the Indian Army for decades, and I guess he's the best person to answer this question. So briefly, I will request you to share your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Abhinav, for getting me here. And this is again a decisive moment for India, a very delicate position India has to take, balancing between Israel and Iran. And for us, both are important. At the same time, we value the position that Israel has always taken for India in terms of a lot of help that we get from Israel, and quite vocal about it. So I think our foundational strength between Israel and India will continue, but we'll have to make some special efforts as related to Iran is concerned. I think it's a bit too early to decide on what will happen, but I agree with Burzine in one of the issues about the credibility of USA and the credibility of Donald Trump. That's a very big question mark in India at the moment, and not only related to the recent conflict between Iran and Israel, but also between what has happened between India and Pakistan. I think interesting time. Let us see how it unfolds.
Thank you very much, General Khandare. And just a personal thought that I would like to share. at least we can begin with declaring Hamas as a terrorist organization, because Hamas, now it's directly involved with the Kashmiri terrorist groups. There were ample evidences in the recent past where Hamas boys were seen attending the meetings in Kashmir. Okay. Thank you. So I
I
have
agree. I
yeah.
agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So we have next question. Iran has banned the IAEA until it gets security guarantees. Who is supposed to give these guarantees, and what kind of guarantees are these supposed to be? Briefly, then we have another questions also. Whoever wants to take this question.
If I may briefly come in,
Yeah.
Iran has had a very testy period since 31st May 2025, when the interim report under Director General Rafael Grossi was submitted. And on 1st June 2025, 19 of the 35 board member formally announced that Iran is in flagrant violation of its obligations as an NPT signatory. Now, that has been contested and passed about as fake news and other aspects on social media, but that's social media for you. That report was a damning report and a thoroughgoing indictment, because not only do we have enrichment to the tune of 90% of near weapons grade, quite frankly, for enough for 10 nuclear warheads. That is to say, Iran is on the cusp of breaking out, which was always a fear, even going back to the JCPOA in 2015, when it was passed, that it could break out sometime down the line. And the question is, it could, Abhinav, and here's the desperation thing that has been put about as how Iran's asymmetric lashing out could unfold in times to come, God forbid, is that Khamenei and the IRGC, who controls the ballistic missile and nuclear program, could mount a crude, hastily assembled device on any one of their missiles. It need not be a sophisticated one on the North Korean models that they currently possess to launch something. And the fact that the IAEA report of 31st May 2025 also found 3 more sites which were hitherto not known, including Turkuzabad, which is a suburb of Tehran, which was passed off as a carpet cleaning factory, which then begs the question, why were uranium traces found of all things in a carpet cleaning factory? And the other site was Varamin, which is near the new Khomeini International Airport, southwest Tehran, and also another site at Lavizan Shan in northeast Tehran, which apparently is where Khamenei is reputed to be bunkered currently. So the IAEA has entire credibility. It is Iran that has to rise to the occasion and to let them in to do their job, because Iran had removed sensors and cameras at all the sites, Natanz, Arak, Isfahan, and elsewhere, which needs to be looked into and revived if they want to come in from the cold and need an off-ramp.